Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of 8 Dead Giants. This is 8 Dead Giants episode 7 already, and here, as teased last week, we have come together to discuss Summer Game Fest. This is the Jeff Keighley-led initiative that has replaced E3 post-pandemic, because E3's completely cancelled, they're not doing that anymore. But now Keighley does 3 shows a year. He does the Video Game Awards, he does Game Fest, and he does Gamescom. And this is the beginning of this year's cycle. So we are gathered here today to talk about video games. And I warn you now, it will only be a video game show, because there's more than enough here for us to fill a good chunk of time. Joining me today, I have Leah back with me to talk about games.
Hello, the games. All the games. So many games.
Yeah, and I'm glad to have you on, Leah, because I know you have a very different perspective on the games than me, and that's going to be interesting to hear, because I've got a bunch of tabs open here with trailers to remind me of some of the games that interested me from this particular 2-hour-long presentation, and then a couple of others that have come up from Day of the Devs afterwards. But we're basically going to go through in a rough order. I don't think, unless you want to talk about a particular game, I will mention ones that were did nothing for me. So I will probably only bring up the ones that interest me as we go through. But obviously, do shout if there's one I've missed or skipped that you do want to talk about.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's a couple that I'm like, I don't want to play them and I'm not interested in, but they literally scared the shit out of me. So yeah, there's those ones as well.
Oh, I look forward to that. That'll be interesting to see which ones those are, if they're the same ones as me. Yes, there were some somewhat disturbing trailers in that 2 hours. I do agree. And we'll also talk about our general impressions of the show and what was on offer, and maybe a little bit about the state of games at the moment in 2025 as well. Yeah, so let's talk about Summer Games Fest. Obviously hosted by Jeff Keighley, and this time joined by Lucy James from GameSpot and Giant Bomb, who I thought was a really good addition to the show. She did a really, really good job. What did you think of her?
Yeah, she was really cool. She had a lovely dress on, I have to say. And she was just really friendly and down to earth and professional, and just did a bang up job, I think.
I thought compared to some of the previous co-hosts he's had, she felt more natural in that role.
Yeah,
it didn't feel as staged and as Hollywood. It felt much more like relaxed, and because obviously she's a podcaster and she comes at it from that kind of perspective rather than like a performative approach, which I think some of the co-hosts have had previously. She just felt like, she's a gamer, she loves this stuff, she wants to talk to you about it, which was, I thought, really nice.
Yes, I think for the first time Jeff Keighley had one who suited him more, I'd say.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's a partnership that will continue at least through this year's output from him, but it may be even into the future. I thought she did a bang up job. But let's get into the games, right? Let's get into the games because there's a lot of them. And the first one that was on my radar, which was Chronicles Medieval World, which was premiered here at the show and had a voiceover by Tom Hardy, which immediately made me interested because Tom Hardy has won Cool Mofo recently from Havoc and many, many, many other films and TV shows over the years. But this was like a medieval set. I was going to say fantasy, but I think it's actually not fantasy. It's trying to go for a really grounded sort of setting of medieval combat. But what looked cool to me is I got the impression from this trailer that you'd be able to be like boots on the ground, but also there was a strategy element where they maybe some small unit tactics and some control of the armies as well. It just looked cool and grounded, and I'm definitely going to keep it on my radar and keep an eye out for when this game sort of comes out and there's more information shared about it. Did this one excite you as well?
Well, I like the Tom Hardy voiceover, but no, not really. If it had more of a fantasy element, I might have liked it more. It just seemed like, this is war. War is bad, but you have to do war anyway, to me.
Yeah, but that spoke to my very male-coded mindset. So I'm like, yeah, give me some gritty war, violence, and big swords, and morning stars and claymores, and yeah, I want to see armies clashing on the honourable battlefield of grim, dark medieval, dark ages style thing. Throw some plague in there as well, maybe, and we'll have a great time.
Plague, great, fun, yes.
Plague can often be a very integral, fun part of video games. Plague Tale comes to mind, and its sequel, Plague Tale Innocence, which was all set during the Dark Ages, and rats and horrible plagues, deprived towns and stuff. Yeah, so there can be some really good good video games out of Plague. Just saying.
Uh-huh. Yeah, okay.
You don't sound convinced. Fair enough. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. End of Abyss by Section 9 Interactive, which I believe are from Sweden, and Epic Games Publishing. This was a kind of sci-fi, top-down, also isometric-y looking, puzzly, maybe, very moody, sci-fi kind of grim. It reminded me a little bit of Inside. It reminded me a little bit of some of the Playdead output. When I was first watching the trailer, I actually thought maybe this was Playdead's new project or something like that. But it just looked cool, and it's like now totally on my radar, and I'm going to be keeping an eye out for End of Abyss. What about you?
I like the look of it. Again, it looked a little bit scary. Don't know if I'll be playing it, but I'm definitely interested to observe and see what happens in it. The story looks interesting.
Yeah, I'm always intrigued by those sort of games and some of the creature design in there and some of the sort of hints at combat mechanics where creatures may be split or morph based on the damage done to them. Looked like it might have some potential to make for a really interesting experience. Obviously, this was very much a teaser. This was very much to build hype. I don't know how much we're seeing of actual gameplay in that trailer, but I'm intrigued enough to want to keep an eye on it. Yeah. Anything else from you on that one?
No, it did look a bit like Inside and whatnot, but yeah, again, a bit scary for me, I think.
Okay. So the next thing was a bit of that I've got on my list is Game of Thrones War of Westeros, and this was a bit of a surprise because Game of Thrones has been done a while now on TV. I don't know if we'll ever see the final actual book. And here we have a fully licensed, clearly using the character models based on the actors. Like, we had Jon Snow in there that straight up looked like Kit Harington. We had Jaime Lannister that straight up looked like the guy that played Jaime Lannister, whose name I can't remember. But they very much looked like the actors. So they've gone and got that licensing and gone and done that deal, and it was very much an official product of the HBO show. And it sounds like and this is just a big cinematic trailer, not gameplay, but it's going to be a strategy game where you're going to be able to basically change the history and the legacy of what happened in Game of Thrones. So in the trailer you saw the White Walker guy killing Kit Harington's character and turning him into a walker, and you saw the dragon falling from the sky, implying that the Lannisters maybe defeated what was her name, Daenerys Targaryen, and the dragons and stuff like that. So you're going to be able to do some like alternative storyline stuff potentially, which that sounds like if that is actually brought into the story properly with like narrative implications, that'll be fun. If it's just put these two armies against each other and the baddies win, that's nothing new. That's RTS's, in any license that we've seen before. So I'm kind of curious to see if they're going to really try and do something with story here, because Game of Thrones is all about the characters. It's all about the story. A medieval fantasy RTS, if it's just the basic bare bones throwing those armies at each other, won't be that interesting, I don't think, to me. But I think the world is rich enough. If they do something creative enough with this type of RTS, it could be cool, but we really don't know yet, do we?
No, again, I would be more interested if it were like, yes, you control Westeros, you do what you want, you are the God Empire. But if it's just like moving little units around, I'm not that interested.
If it's just, I definitely know what you mean by that. It's a wait and see, isn't it? Because we've got no gameplay. The RTS stuff is sort of in a bit of resurgence right now. There are a few sort of indie RTSs that are coming out that are trying to harken back to the heydays of the Command and Conquers and the Total Annihilations and those types of RTSs, base buildy, small armies, 200 units, 300 units types of combat. And that's fun. I love that era. I have a real fondness and nostalgia for that era of RTS gaming. And the genre just sort of seems to want to keep to persevering and kind of chugging along in the background. Having a big license like this for it, I'm very curious, optimistic, cautiously optimistic. Let's see what we see in terms of gameplay first.
It can't just be RTS, because what's the point in getting all the licenses for the characters and the actors' likenesses and whatnot? So there must be something more. I just didn't show it what it was. So.
I mean, they could have done that purely for the trailer. Like
Lame.
that, it could just be to get you interested and hook you in with the trailer, and then you have some portraits and stuff throughout the campaign, and maybe some voice acting. But I hope you're right. If you're going to bring a fantasy license like Game of Thrones, which is very much about the characters and not about the armies kind of appear around the characters, right? Usually
Yeah.
because the characters have a motivating factor about them. If you think about the storylines of Game of Thrones, that it's not the other way around. So you need story, you need narrative to make it feel like Game of Thrones. So I really hope they do something interesting with that, but we just don't know.
Otherwise, I'm very sorry, it's false advertising and I'm going to be quite miffed.
Video game trailers that aren't accurate representations of the game. Oh, shock face. Oh my god. I mean, it used to be the part of the fun of it. You get these incredible trailers and you get the game and you'd be like, what happened here?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's gotten a lot better. It's gotten a lot better about accurate representation. Yeah. Yeah, historically that was one of the things games did all the time.
Very rude.
Yes, very rude. Like, there were literally lawsuits. Next, we had a couple of projects by Mundfish. Now, you might not know that name straight away, but Mundfish, the guys behind the somewhat sleeper hit of Atomic Heart that came out. It was on Game Pass on Xbox as well as PC and other platforms, but that's where I played it. And it's kind of this retro-futuristic, very tongue-in-cheek, very adult in the way I'm like boobs and sexiness and violence. Adult if you're a 14-year-old thinking what is adult, I guess. It's very and you can probably tell from my tone, not a huge fan of Atomic Heart. Didn't love it. Thought that it was sort of a bit janky and tried really hard, but it felt really forced and the humor didn't land for me. But then we got these two projects that were shown off at the Game Fest here, and we have Atomic Heart 2, and then we had The Cube, both shown for the first time. What did you think of these?
I was quite liking Atomic Heart 2 from what I was seeing with it. And then I started thinking, okay, Atomic Heart 2 and The Cube, where are all the loincloths for the dudes? Because ladies are just walking around in bikinis. Where are all the loincloths for the dudes? Was my takeaway from that. It looked interesting to begin with, and then they lost my interest with their just, tits and boobs.
It's, yeah, so it's like lots of sexy robot cyborgs and sexy robot ladies with their curves and sexy women with not much clothing on, and it does just feel like a very much an adolescent power fantasy kind of come to life in a very kind of try hard. We've almost gone to like a committee. What's a cool setting that the young lads will be interested in? Ooh, how about like some sci-fi pulpy bits, but make it feel retro futuristic? Ooh, yeah, that would be cool. Like Fallout. Fallout's popular. Let's do that. And then it's not the most polished experience. It's a very Atomic Heart 1 was a very ambitious game, and I think 2 and this Cube thing both sound very ambitious as well. So Atomic Heart 2 is they're kind of blowing out Atomic Heart, making it open world, making it a much larger experience. And then the Cube is going even further, I believe, what they said at the show, which was that it's going to be an MMO FPS. So when you throw in the words MMO, you're talking about massively multiplayer online experience on this cube, which is this giant sci-fi construct that's hanging in the sky, and it moves like a Rubik's Cube and shifts and therefore creates different environments and different play spaces. I mean, oh my God, that sounds ambitious. That sounds like a huge undertaking. And the visuals and the kind of like the style is like, it's that same thing as Atomic Heart. It's very lurid. It's very eye-catching. It does suck you in because of that, and it makes you kind of look at it and go, okay. It hooks you, doesn't it? But then you kind of look a little deeper under the surface and you just sort of see that very base kind of, it's not actually that creative what they're doing there. It doesn't, but then it's like if they pull off the technical side of it, if the game feels and plays well, if it works as an MMO experience, and if the open world of Atomic Heart 2 is properly open world and there's lots of driving in the trailer and mechanics like that, and if they're able to achieve that, just that gameplay alone might be enough to pull me in. The gameplay alone wasn't enough for me in the original Atomic Heart.
No, it's annoying. I started off interested, and then by the end I was just like thinking, that woman really needs a bra.
I can't say it was the top thing on my mind, but all right, fair enough. That would really need some bra. I just thought it all just looks like I'd have been interested when I was in my, when I was 18, 19, 20, 21, but not so much now. It didn't look. It doesn't have any nuance, Atomic Hide, and it's this whole kind of twisted Soviet bloc kind of weird, just slightly lazy and inconsistent and not that well thought out world in terms of its story and its characters and its setting. It's just, I don't know, didn't click for me. Maybe I need to go back to the first one and play a bit more and see if I can get into it a bit further. Yeah, okay. So let's move on to the next thing, which was Marvel Cosmic Invasion, which is an old school 2D pixel art beat 'em up in the vein of the Turtles games and the old X-Men games. And this is Cosmic Invasion, so we're talking about cosmic level characters, and they introduced 2 new characters to this, which was She-Hulk and Rocket Raccoon in this trailer, but it looks like we're going to have Nova and other characters from the cosmic realm, and then dealing with cosmic threats such as Annihilation. So I'm interested because I'm a massive Marvel fan, and there's some real deep cut lore going on in there. I'm seeing the Brood in there. I'm seeing all kinds of Marvel cosmic characters and enemies that you don't get in the MCU for the most part. Even in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, they never touched on Annihilation or the Brood or anything like that. So seeing it in the video game, and I like those types of games. Those brawlers are a lot of fun, especially in co-op, and the art looked great. So I'm interested. How did you feel about that one?
I mean, yeah, it looked cool, and I like Marvel, so seeing all the characters and the lesser known characters and the niche characters was fun. I mean, if someone said, "Yeah, do you want to play this?" I'll go, "Yeah, I'll give it a go." Am I thrilled? Am I excited? Am I going to go, "Oh yeah, I really want to play this"? No.
That's fair. Yeah, I kind of want to ask if any of the games made you feel like that, but we should get there to the end. Don't tell me yet. Let's see what you think at the end, because I have a feeling the answer might be no. But what next up? Then we'll move quickly on from Marvel. This was quite an original looking game. This was something called Felt That Boxing, and this was all in Unreal. But you kind of wouldn't know it because everything looked like puppets, like actual puppets, felt puppets, or like a Muppet Show episode. And it was this seemingly very comedic boxing game about this orphan that has to win a boxing tournament to secure the orphanage. Or it didn't make any sense, but I don't think it was trying to. And it was just very silly, and I kind of won me over as the trailer went along. I thought at first, I still can't quite work out how the game is going to play, but there were some health bars on screen at one point. It just felt very much like you're watching a puppet show, and the aesthetic, conveyed even through the gameplay elements, which I thought was really impressive. I know humour is a bit of a tricky spot for you, Leah, so...
I am actually quite interested in this because it looked freaking adorable. It's like, I'm a little sad orphan and I have to go and box mean people to save my orphanage, but I'm also a puppet, and they look so cute. They just looked adorable, and I want to play it.
Okay, that one grabbed you. That one won you over.
Yeah.
That's cool. I wasn't sure it was going to do that. And it's a boxing game.
Yeah, that bit puts me off a bit, but the felt and the puppets probably will overcome that bit.
Yeah, it looked different, didn't it?
Yeah,
it really looked different. Now, somewhere amongst all this, and I don't think many of these are going to be on a list, was about half an hour of incredibly generic anime action games sprinkled throughout this show. I couldn't tell you the name of any of them. They all looked incredibly anime as anime could be, and they all looked like they could basically be the same game.
Yeah.
Did you have did any of the anime games stand out to you at all?
Anime, anime, and that's it. That was it. Anime.
Just very... There was a lot of them as well.
Yeah.
I felt like we saw about 5 or 6 different ones, and they all looked like they could be the same game.
I do remember one where there was a fish man.
Yes, there was a fish man. Yes.
And one that looked like a massive hamster on steroids. But that's about it.
Okay. Yeah. I thought I should just mention the anime, because there will be people that will care about the anime as anime games, but we're not them.
No.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, I want a sword that's not 3 times my size and that actually fits in a scabbard.
Well, you say that, but going back to that medieval game at the beginning with Tom Hardy's voiceover, I mean, so there are some very big swords.
Yeah, but
Very, very
they
big
at
swords.
least have a tendency to edge towards slightly realistic.
Then we came back with another one, which was sort of like a video game-ified social deduction game. Now, are you familiar with social deduction games?
Yeah, but that's all I'm going to... I don't like them.
Not a fan. So like a Werewolf by Night or a Secret Hitler or those types of games. And this was like that. And I believe there's even some TV shows that use these mechanics now as well. And it was like that, but they added more gameplay bits. Like you could escape from the place, or you can try and kill each other, or but basically it's the same concept of in this they were wolves and lambs, and the wolves have to take out the lambs, and the lambs have to point fingers at and get the wolves disposed of. And it was that you've seen it a million times before, but here's a game called Kill It In, trying to do that in a massive multiplayer type setting. I think they said 24 players. I couldn't be less interested. Did this
No.
excite you or interest you in any way?
No, I would probably actively avoid it.
Any particular reason?
Well, I like actual detective shows like Poirot and Sherlock and all that kind of things. They're fine. Do I actually want to interact with people in a game doing that? No. I'm fine, thank you.
Fair enough. Okay, let's move on to the next game. Now, this one's been cooking for a little while now, and I believe the release is just around the corner. Well, not just around the corner, but it's coming out in October, which is still a few months away, but they had a very positive beta test of it recently, which is Ark Raiders, which has got a great look to it. Some very, very good action from what I've heard. Reports of the beta test that happened have been really positive. Everything about this game looks cool as F, but at the end of the day, it is also a PvPvE extraction shooter, so it's sort of like those types of games don't thrill me as much as some, but I will say the industry is desperate to make them work at the moment, and they keep trying to make more of them, so this one at least looks, in terms of setting and concept, the most interesting of the ones that they've been trying recently. I'm certainly more into the idea of this than I am Marathon, for example. What did this do anything for you?
It looks very, very cool. I agree with that, and it looks interesting. I'd be more interested if it was PvE, because I don't really want to interact with other people. So I'll probably try it, but then go, people, and stop.
Next up was Chrono Odyssey. Do you remember this one?
No. That's how interesting I was. I mean, remind me, because it sounded interesting, and then I think I just went, ugh.
So this was sort of like another one of the... It looked a bit Soulsy, so it had like a dark fantasy vibe about it, but the thing that looked interesting to me was there was some indication of time manipulation or time into the gameplay. There was also lots of different classes or characters that seemed to be accessible, so it wasn't necessarily a Souls-like. It felt a bit more actiony than that, maybe a bit more therefore accessible to a lot of players. I basically sort of fall asleep with the Souls-like games, of which, like the anime games, there were about 4 or 5, and most of which I don't even remember, and they all sort of blended into one in my head.
Was the one with the lady with the candles in her head?
No.
See,
that was one of the anime games.
That was a timey-wimey one as well, though, wasn't it?
It's bad, isn't it? That they're just not very distinctive for a lot of these games.
Yeah.
They kind of all blend together. But this one is moderately on my radar. Like, I'm half interested. I'll keep an eye out, and I'll keep my ear to the ground about if it's any good or not, and things like that. But yeah.
So I actually had one before this that I was a bit interested in.
Oh,
which
yeah.
was Dune Awakening.
Dune, huh?
Yeah.
I guess I didn't put that on my list because it's out.
Yeah, okay. I just thought it was interesting that they seemed to be having a Harkonnen as one of the characters. That was interesting to me. And I love Dune, so playing Dune on Dune sounds really cool. So the base building bit looked a bit interesting.
So it's a MMORPG. right? So
Okay.
it's Dune is a survival MMORPG. It's one of those types of games. It's made by the same guys that I think that made the Conan one of those. So yeah,
Okay.
base building, exploration, crafting, survival, and it's not so much that there's a character that is Harkonnen and there's a character that's Atreides. It's that they're classes, right? They're
Right.
factions
Okay.
that you choose. You can choose to play as a Harkonnen, you can choose to play as a Atreides, you may be able to choose to play as a Fremen. I'm not 100% on that. And then it's about, how you forge alliances, and they're trying to convey this, aren't they, through the trailer? You forge
Yeah.
alliances with
Yeah.
players, you survive, you work together, and then you fall apart and you turn on each other and you go to war and you do all that. And that's the nature of these types of game experiences. I think having it set on Arrakis, sandworms and base building and stuff like that seems really cool and fun. I think it's going to be basic. I think it's going to be free to play, or at least a relatively low barrier of entry for the base edition of the game. So it will be worth checking out. I know it'll be on PC. It might come to consoles. I can't remember what they've said about that. I can't remember, but it's one I've been keeping an eye on because it's Dune, and the Dune universe is really cool,
Yeah.
isn't it? So
It's just the mechanics, though, of having base building on Dune. It seems like, well, isn't a sandworm going to come and eat your base?
we build it on some rocks.
Yeah. Again, enough to be intriguing for me, put it that way.
Yeah. Next up was Out of Words, which is on my list of
Yep, that's
interest.
on my
Did you
list
like the look
too.
of this
Yep,
one?
I did.
So this
I
is
really
the claymation kind of vibe, co-op platformer. What did you think of it then?
Yeah, I thought it was. It wasn't. It was kind of cute, but creepy cute.
Yeah.
So, and they seem to have like a little manta ray pet, or a flying manta ray pet. I don't know, but that looked cute, and they had no mouths, which
Yeah.
was very interesting to me. Is that
Well,
just
extremely disturbing.
yes? I mean, Out of Words. Obviously, the title conveys this, but is it how much of that is prominent in the game? Is it everything? Is there a reason for it? We don't know, and I am interested.
Yeah, me too. Next one was a big release in a franchise that I'm kind of moderately a fan of. So I weirdly, this is the Mafia series of game by Hangar 13. I really, really, really enjoyed Mafia 3. 1 and 2 I found less interesting. Like I didn't play them before 3. I actually got into the Mafia series through 3 and then went back and played 1 and 2. And what really grabbed me with 3 was the time period and the character. So you basically played a Vietnam war vet, a black Vietnam war vet, which was important to the storyline in 3 in the 70s. And you've come back to find like your sort of, you got no respect, nobody cares about what you've been through, and therefore you're going to take what you're owed. So you get into this crime situation and you kind of actually set up a mafia, but you're at that point in history, you're disposing of the old families and the old way of doing things, and actually throwing out the Italian mob and things like that from the city that you're in. So in this one, Mafia the Old Country, you're going right back to the origins in Sicily and Italy of the actual OG mafia organizations. So that'll, I think, be kind of fun and interesting. And obviously there's a time period there in the early 1900s with the technology and the weaponry and things of that nature, and there's obviously like lots of horseback riding still going on. So it's a very different feel to Mafia 3, which was in the 70s. So this does interest me, especially that Mafia 3 did really poorly for Hangar 13, to the point where I think the studio was on the edge of disappearing entirely. So I'm really glad they've been able to come back and do another one in the series, and it has been a good few years now since Mafia 3. So I'm curious about this one. Obviously, in a world where we're about to get a new GTA as the big crime simulator, this feels like, it's smart that they've gone for such a different historical approach on it.
Yeah, I mean, I liked the trailer. I liked the look of it. I probably won't play it because I don't really play any mafia type games like that. But just the whole story and the concept of loyalty is everything, and this is where it all started. Yeah, it definitely looked interesting.
No, I know the next one on my list. Wow, I suspect it really gripped you. So, Lego Voyagers.
Oh my god, it looks so cute. I really want to play this. It looked freaking adorable. It's just a little stud with an eye, and its friend who was another little stud with an eye, and they're just kind of like going about solving puzzles. Oh, how can I get over here? Oh, how can I get over there? Oh, it's a spaceship. It just looked adorable, and I want to play it.
It did look really cute. Like, yeah. So these guys, I think, made the previous sort of Lego building game, which actually was more about a Lego game from the perspective of the blocks and not like characters in it, as it were. You're not playing as minifigs, you're playing as blocks, and it's like utilizing the creativity of that mindset of you can build anything with Lego. And I think this does look like they've brought some more character into it, and I think that'll be a really great way in for people. And it just looked like it should be really charming and a fun experience. Yeah.
Really, and just I like the idea of using the creativity of what you can do with Lego, and just like, oh, I'll add a little piece here, and then I'll be able to slingshot over this little gap, and there's a little boat, and it just I am really, really, really interested in this.
Next one up. I'm wondering if this is one of the ones you alluded to at the beginning, which was really one of the really scary looking games, Fractured Blooms. And I just noticed where I brought the trailer up again, it says at the beginning, inspired by a true story.
What?
So I'm like, okay. So this seems to be like a cozy farming game via like horror, like psychedelic, cosmic horror weirdness, right? So like something like a Lovecraft meets Stardew Valley, but 3D and like it just felt very uncomfortable. There was lots of weird like voices in your head through the trailer and disturbing visuals and don't eat the tomatoes. Like what is going on in this game?
Yeah.
I mean, it's on my radar because it looks so weird.
It did start off looking like, oh yeah, it's like a farming game. I'll play that. Then about 30 seconds later, it's like, oh hell no, I'm not playing that. No, just no. I don't need scary games. Thank you.
I like scary games.
No.
I enjoy a scary game because I don't get too scared because you're always in control. You can always turn it off whenever you want, right? So they don't freak me out too much.
I am very prone to jumping out of my skin with great frequency, and that is applicable when I'm playing scary games as well. So I will just be jumping out of my skin all the time, and no thank you, I don't need that. I prefer my heart rate to remain quite level.
Smart. Sensible. So that's Fractured Blooms, keeping that one on my radar. Next up, we had Dying Light the Beast. I've known about this for a while, and I think it partly exists due to some of the negative reaction to Dying Light 2. I enjoyed the Dying Light games a lot from Techland. I think they're good fun. They're good kind of like double A, quite high budget, open world zombie smasher games, right? I will give props to Techland that did huge amounts of post-release support for Dying Light 2, bringing in all kinds of features and functionality that weren't there at launch, much like they did for Dying Light 1. They've really supported it. But like I said, there was a negative reaction to Dying Light 2. People didn't like the setting. People didn't like the main character. So we're actually going back to the original character from the first game, and I think even possibly the original setting, though. I'm not sure about that. And it does look a bit like this has been made quickly. This was more of an expansion than it is a full new game. It feels very much like there's a lot of assets being reused, not a lot of sort of forward movement on the engine. But, it's been a hot minute since Dying Light 2. I'll be up for some more Dying Lights, so I can't say I complain too much about that. They're fun games to play. Parkour, melee combat, zombie infected type creatures, open world to bum around in. Why not?
Yeah, I it looked fine. It's not really my type of game, but I do appreciate that there's the scavenging aspect of those games. So I'll probably like dip in and dip out a little bit. But yeah, it's definitely more of a you game than a me game.
That's fair enough. I think now this might be my most excited for game of the entire show that I'm going to talk about now. Mixtape. This game looks like everything I'd enjoy in a film, so I can't see why I wouldn't enjoy it in a game. So it's about, the last summer of your teenage years. It's got an incredible list of musical artists are on this soundtrack for this game. Like, oh man, banger after banger after banger. I won't even try and list them all. It's got a great style to it, a great look. It's going to be, you know, pithy teen stuff, you know, set in that 80s 90s crossover period, skateboarding, you know, the summer, there's the childhood we all wish we had based on the movies we saw in the UK, but then didn't ever get to exist or happened for us. But I'm actually pretty doubtful it happened for anybody. It's a fantasy kind of concept that those childhoods happen for anybody, even in the US. But it looks brilliant. I mean, I was absolutely top of my hype meter for Mixtape.
Yeah, it looks really, really good, and I'm really, really excited about it as well. It is just that perfect summer soundtrack game. And it looks amazing. Again, some of the bands and the songs that they were advertising, it's going to be part of it. I was like, yep, love that, love that, love that. And then you just kind of like run around, spending time with your friends, as you do in like the summer after you've done your exams, but you haven't started the next bit as yet. And you're literally, I don't have to study. I don't have to do anything. This is amazing. This is my summer. Yeah.
So it looks like it's trying to convey that feeling of the world is your oyster. It's full of potential, but also no pressure. You can be who you want to be. You can do what you want to do. There's no constraints on the opportunities that are in front of you. And it's a feeling that you never get again, right? Because you start adulting and you get to that point of life where you're going to have dependents, or you're going to have, you know, mortgages or rent or bills to pay, and, you know, or you're going off to uni and you've got the pressures of performing there and stuff like that. But at that point, that end of high school, before college in the US structure, that kind of thing, and that big inhale that you get to take in that moment in life, which is, frankly, let's be real, squandered on all of them, everyone in that point, because nobody realizes that at the time.
Nope.
You're too busy doing it. You're too busy living it. I think if you're that self-aware at age 16 to 19, then my God, you're a genius. But most people aren't. And it just looks like an incredible piece of nostalgia. That soundtrack, I think, is going to be really transportative, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And it's one of those little indie experiences I can't wait to check out when that releases. I think it's later this year. So I'm really looking forward to that one.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that the songs are probably from the period when we would have been that age. So that slots in nicely as well.
Yeah, it's going to be good. Next up was Acts of Blood. This was interesting because it's a solo developer in Indonesia, where he set like a brawler, brutal fighting game in his hometown. Jeff Keighley pointed that out, and then I watched this and went, man, if he lived, this is where he lives. I'm really sorry for the guy. This is a shithole. But it was very, it got strong vibes of The Raid, which is obviously an action movie that also came from Indonesia, though directed by a Welshman. But it's got that very similar hyper-kinetic, bruising, damaging, high-impact feeling to the combat based on the trailer. Now, I'd be very curious to see how that plays. I can't wait to see what it's like. I love a brutal kind of brawler beat 'em up like that. I really enjoyed Sifu, which came out in the last couple of years. So that was actually quite challenging and difficult. I wonder where this will fit on that scale of balance in terms of the gameplay. If it's going to be like counter heavy, if it's going to be environmental kind of contextual heavy, or if it's just going to be button mashy, right? Lots of different approaches to that type of game. Did it resonate with you at all, Leo, or was it more of a Ben game?
It's more of a Ben game. I mean, it looked interesting, and I can see what you mean by how is this going to control. I think it would be better if it was more of a fluid style of thing rather than difficult and designed to be difficult, because the way it was flowing on screen looked really interesting and looked like the way it should be. So I'll be interested to see what the mechanics are like, but it's not a me game, it's a you game.
Next up was a new project by the Guacamelee guys. Fantastic game, by the way, Guacamelee. I know they had something between that and this, but I can't remember what it was. And this is Blighted, which has got I thought had a really interesting, bright, colourful, vibrant art style, but I also had quite a dark tone to do with a blight, sort of possession and evil spreading across the land. It had a top-down isometric style, which was reminiscent of a Bastion or Hades or one of those guys. But it just looked like it's got a great sort of character design, strong artistic design throughout, including the environments. We know they're good at that sort of stuff. Guacamelee has got all of that in spades as well, but with a very different approach. This looks like a lot of fun. This looks really good. It looks like it's a safe bet type of game from that kind of developer, but at the same time, they'll do that well. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I am interested in this, even though it looks a bit scary. The kind of the preface of it was interesting enough for me to get past the slight scariness, and it's not super scary. So yeah, I am interested in seeing what this is like.
You thought Blighted looked scary? No. The scary one is the next one.
Yeah.
This one, I mean, it's called ill, possibly because it makes you ill when you look at it.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
No.
This, I mean, I kind of want to play it because, oh boy, is it going there?
Do you know what my notes say about this?
No.
No fucking way.
I'm literally skipping through the trailer right now on another window, and every frame is horror to look at. It's just...
Nope, I'm just noping out.
Just like, so what the reason it's first person perspective. I don't think we know much about this. I think it's a new studio, small team, and it's just like the most unsettling kind of horror visuals possible. When it's all about, for me, a horror that's really disturbing is when it's realistic, but then proportions are skewed and just enough to feel wrong, and then when and it creates a sense of continuous unease and uncomfortable, because it's not like you're looking at a monster. You're looking at something that's almost human, but is skewed enough when it's not. And that I think is the best horror if you want to scare people. Not the best horror to look at, because this looks awful. But if I can play it on easy and I get a big shotgun and I can mulch all these enemies, then it'll be fine. But this genuinely looked really unpleasant, and the visuals are very high fidelity. And at the end, there's even like demonic, satanic, possessed, evil baby creatures, and that's just not a good scene.
The thing that got me was the mass of partially congealed humans.
Yep.
That was kind of flowing towards you.
Yep.
I'm alright.
Human slime wave.
Yeah. I'm good.
Very unpleasant. Watch that trailer, everyone.
Don't need that.
Worth watching just for the grossness alone. And then it was quite like, and now we have a mech game. I was very happy when Mecha Break showed up after Ill, because I was like, I need something to sort of palate cleanse my mind after that, so I can forget about it. And we had a mech game. I don't really know much about Mecha Break. I know it's been tested, and I know it's been out there and stuff circulating for a little while. It looked a lot like an Armored Core game, to be honest, from the trailer for me, which isn't a bad thing. So big mechs at speed, lots of explosions, lasers, guns going off, sci-fi setting. Looked a bit like Jaeger reminiscent from Pacific Rim, if you know that. But I think it's just mech on mech action. We had a bit of a post-apocalyptic kind of world setting. Obviously lots of war and destruction around the mech combat. And I'm down, though. Look cool. Look like a good time.
Yeah, I'm interested in it. I'll give it a go. My mech games, I'm more a mech warrior type of person rather than a Gundam type of person, I guess. But yeah, I will give it a go because it did look cool.
Next up was Infinitesimals. That's not the easiest word to say, and I think when Lucy actually presented it as well, she struggled around it as well. Infinitesimals. It's the plural at the end of it that makes it difficult, because infinitesimal, I believe, is a word, but infinitesimals, I think, is the name of this game, if you know what I mean. I don't think that's a actual thing. But it interesting, because we had Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, but with highly developed technology and like crazy sci-fi battles and stuff going on, but also Honey, I Shrunk the Kid with like, beetles and ants and things like that, which I thought was actually quite a unique look.
Yeah, I'm interested in this. It's more what they said and what they didn't show that made me interested. There was a line, something along the lines of, we thought we were going to join the Industrial Revolution or something like that, and it appeared that now they weren't, and that has intrigued me, and I want to know what happens.
Yeah. It's actually reminiscent. There's a comic coming out right now. I've only read the first year. I'm trying to remember who wrote. I think it's Jason Aaron. It's like Bug Wars or something like that. And that's about a crazy like world of tiny existence in the back garden of this kid's house, and he ends up getting pulled into it. And again, it's like this, where there are humanoids and there's technology, and then there's like mystical elements as well, and there's magic elements, and it's all in this small enclosed, quite walled in back garden of a house, but there's a whole universe in it, which is a really kind of fun fantasy setting, with, and as you can see in this, there's some sci-fi elements. And I don't really know exactly what the gameplay is going to be. Is it action adventure? Is it, multiple players? Is it single player? I get the impression there's a main character in there, and that's who you're playing as, which means it should be more like an action adventure game with a story and stuff. And that really interests me. And it's a small team. And again, it's like, quite an interesting concept, because it does stand out, because I haven't seen anything quite like it. So I'm down for that. Except, Grounded, which was the one on Xbox, which was the multiplayer, base buildy survival game, like Dune, but in a Honey I Shrunk the Kids setting instead. But this it's got more of that sci-fi vibe, got more of that kind of story thing going on. So yeah, I'm curious about that. I'm going to keep an eye on Infinitesimals. Yeah, could be good.
Yeah, and I do think it was a trailer done well, because it gave you enough to make you interested, but still left enough mystery.
Yeah, absolutely. See what comes next. The next game was really strange. Wu-Tang Rise of the Deceiver. It's a Wu-Tang game in 2025. Yeah. I mean, we didn't really see a lot of it, but the implication from the trailer is it's going to be anime-inspired combat third-person action adventure based around Ghostface Killer trying to find the rest of the Wu-Tang clan. Like, okay. Like, cool. The vibes, the music, hopefully will be awesome and things like that. But what did you think about this? I mean, are you aware, Leah, of the rich history of games around the Wu-Tang Clan?
Nope.
No. Well, there is quite a lot of games around them. Obviously tied very closely into the music that was produced, and obviously you must be aware of the music a bit. Wu-Tang Clan.
I remember one music video where they were in a prehistoric cave pit, and that's about it.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. I mean, they're pretty famous. They've done a lot of stuff, but obviously, they're almost most famous for the amount of members of the clan that died, somewhat questionably over the years. So there's a whole thing there. It was just a bit of a left field. Oh, okay. That's all right. Cool. So we'll move on for that, because we got basically nothing from that trailer. There was nothing to really glean from it other than maybe some anime combat, and that was kind of what we had. All right, next up, we started to get into some of the we're getting to the end of the show now, and we're starting to see some of the big reveals, and I think one of the major ones was Stranger Than Heaven. Now, this is made by the Yakuza guys, right? RGG. And if you're familiar with the Yakuza games, they have a very kind of distinctive vibe. And this had that, but it also had it set in what was it, the 1930s, I guess? Or the
1943.
1943. Well done for remembering that. But it had a very distinctive setting, and it was funny when the main character is as soon as I saw him, I was going, oh, well, that guy's got some main character energy, hasn't he? Jesus, wow, he's got a funky hat and a cool jacket, and he's about a foot taller than everyone around him.
Yeah,
which
was, he did look a foot taller.
Yeah, which was interesting. But I think actually we got a hint at the end of the trailer, didn't we, that there is a reason, because he's got mixed heritage and he's not from that part of the world, and there's going to be a racial element, and that'll play into it, especially during the time period. And I think, okay, this is all going to come together. It just oozed cool though, didn't it? It had a real strong vibe, and that's the kind of, that's what you get from that developer. They really do a great job of setting and vibe and feeling and character work. So I'm definitely excited about that, because I came to the Yakuza games pretty late. And I've been getting into the newer ones, the Like a Dragon ones, which have only just come out recently. But there's 7 games previous to that. And it's a bit hard to go back to in some ways because they are quite old, but they are very, very, very good. So having a reset here, having a place where people can all jump on and start at the beginning of the franchise as it could potentially be, I think is great for them because that'll now that the Yakuza games have broken way more out into the mainstream. I think one of the things that's stopping people enjoying them is that impenetrability of the back catalogue. So now we get that ability to jump into a new thing, and I think that'll really appeal to a lot of people. And I think it looked great. The quality of the visuals looked amazing, and I expect that gameplay to be banging. So it's gonna be a good time.
It did look really, really cool, and it was one of the standout ones or trailers, I guess. Will I play it? Probably not. Will I watch someone else play it? Quite possibly.
So we next had, we're at the end of the show now, and it's the big final game reveal, which was, I thought, brilliantly teased and kind of obfuscated earlier on in the night. So famously, we're about to have, I think it's the 30th anniversary of the Resident Evil games, and they quickly had the woman who voice acted the big vampire lady from the last Resident Evil game. I can't remember the character's name.
Dimitrescu?
Something like that. She came out.
Yep.
And so she introduced the creative director behind the franchise, and he came out, oh, it's gonna be anniversary, but you're gonna have to wait a bit longer. We've got nothing to share right now. But before you know it, in the blink of an eye, I believe was his term that he used, we'll be sharing more. And I believe if we paid more attention, we might have seen what was going to happen. So this trailer kicks off, and it's high quality CGI. But I'm like, I know this engine. The character models, and it's like, that's the RE engine. I know that's the RE engine. And lo and behold, we get the first trailer for Resident Evil 9 Requiem, which is a big deal. Anytime there's a new Resident Evil game, you got to take notice. Capcom are doing great stuff right now. They are producing a lot of games. They're really on form. Resident Evil games have been fantastic. The remakes that they've been putting out have been top tier. And so when we get a new mainstream Resident Evil game, you got to pay attention. So what did you think of this trailer?
I actually really like the trailer. It piqued my interest. I don't really play Resident Evil games. Again, scary games, not for Leah. But this was good enough to go, I might give this a go, because it looks damn good.
What really hooked me was going back to Raccoon City post-nuke. And I was like, whoa, okay, we're actually going to go back. I mean, it's in the trailer. Maybe we do, maybe we don't go fully back there. But the idea of going back to the place the outbreak began in and understanding maybe what has happened there, because we've been all around the world, we've done all these different stories, and we've had that when Resident Evil kind of came back after 7, they did a bit of a reset because 7 was not well received. It was not very good. And then with 8, they brought us back. I'm sorry, 6 wasn't good. Sorry, 7 was good. 7 was that small scale, let's do kind of like out in the backwoods kind of horror. And then they broadened that out a bit more with 8, which was the one where Dimitrescu was in. And that's a bit more fantasy. It's a bit more medieval. It's kind of broadened out the world a bit more again. I get the impression with 9, it's going to be even bigger expanse, brought back to the modern day, brought back to kind of the core of the story around Raccoon City and about the implications of what happened in the first 1, 2, 3 games. So that's, I think, really cool. And that's really exciting. And it's the right time to do that, isn't it, with the anniversary and to bring it all back full circle. And yeah, I wonder if they'll keep it first person, right? Because the last couple have been first person perspectives. The games prior to that were obviously isometric originally with tank controls, and then third person, and then they went first person. So I'll be curious to see what they do with that. The remakes of 2, 3, and 4 obviously were all third person, have been very well received, and people have really enjoyed that. So I could see them potentially going back to third person. And the other thing to bear in mind with the RE engine is that they use that engine for the Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen 2, which was, or just Dragon's Dogma 2, it's not called Dark Arisen 2, Dragon's Dogma 2, which is the same engine, and that was kind of the experiment of making an open world game with it. And I think they're going to utilize that experience to really blow out 9 and make it huge. Also the title, Requiem. That sounds, it's got that vibe of epilogue, conclusion, drawing things together to a close, maybe to do a big reset again with whatever 10 might be, or do we go back to just Resident Evil, or even Biohazard, which is what it's known as in Japan originally. So I'm very curious. I'm very excited. It was a scary trailer, lots of atmosphere, great character stuff in there with the main FBI agent analyst lady character stuff, and how it started off with just like very much an office in the FBI, and then it kind of flashed back or flashed forwards, or we don't know, right? What's happening? So
I am definitely intrigued, despite it being scary.
Yeah, and that'll be out next year, 2026. Not long, and it'll be with us. So yeah, definitely on the hype meter, pretty high there for Resident Evil 9. I'll be very curious to see more of that as they show it over the rest of the year. So that took us to the end of Game Fest. I think we're going to give a shout out to a couple of games that came from Day of the Dev. Basically, this weekend there's lots of game shows happening, focused on different elements of PC gaming, console gaming, including the big Xbox Bethesda showcase that's going to happen on Sunday night. Unfortunately, due to the time of that, it probably means I won't be able to do a record to cover that content still this week. That will have to bump till the following week, but I'll see how I feel. Maybe I'll do something special just solo to get that out the door. But other than that, though, Day of the Dev happened. They showed some stuff that had just been shown at Game Fest in more detail, but a couple of the games that came up out of this that drew my attention were Sword of the Sea by the Abzu guys. What did you think of Sword of the Sea?
Okay, I am actually really, really interested in this. It looked super fun, but in a kind of like chill, I'm saving the ocean type of way. And there was just like loads of sea creatures and marine mammals kind of flying or swimming through the air and the sea. That bit was confusing, but it just looked really kind of, you're doing stuff, it's exciting, but it's also flowy and chill and cool, and you just like feel better for having played it, was the impression.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely reminded me of Abzu, which is a traversal game as well, but it also had that sort of like journey vibe, like that kind of like you're kind of on a hoverboard, which is a sword, like sort of flying, gliding, maybe doing the odd trick, seeing things, experiencing things, going through beautiful environments, and like you said, like a Zen flow state game rather than a challenging, button mashy or timing game, right? So yeah, it looked really cool and chill. The next one though,
flower?
No.
Oh, damn it.
Abzu. Journey and Flower are the same guys, but this is the Abzu guys, yeah.
Okay.
Next one up, I definitely, when I watched this, I was like, oh, Leah, with her art background, may well be interested in this. And this is Please Watch the Artwork, which looked like a really quirky little minimal interface game where, it's a lot of clicking, and I get the impression we might get some creepy story elements out of this, but basically it looked like animated versions of real modern art that you kind of have to keep an eye on, but weird things happen to them.
Yeah. Like there was people moving, and there's like categories where you have to report what's happened in the painting, and one of them was possession, which is interesting, and then the one was something like taken over by clown or something.
Sad clown.
Yeah, sad clown. So yeah, it looked really, really interesting, and I'm going to play that. Definitely.
I don't really know what to think of it.
Nope.
I'm guessing there'll be some kind of overarching narrative through line. I mean, if you're being reductive about it, I mean, it's the same type of game as a Five Nights at Freddy's, where you're watching a screen looking for stuff that's wrong, right? And creepy and slightly jump scary, but with this kind of cool modern art, real sort of connection to real art pieces vibe, and I'm like, this is bizarre and different and weird, and
fun.
And that's kind of one of the things I love about games, right? And that's why Day of the Dev, which focuses on the indie games after the Games Fest proper, is a great show as well, because it does show you more about those often most creative projects that come out of the smaller developers. But yeah, that's sort of where we're up to here as we record at 1 p.m. on the Saturday. There'll be more stuff coming out over the weekend, but what are your thoughts on everything right now? I know you've got some.
I thought it was a very indicative that everyone is playing it safe at the moment. I think, because you've got, again, as we talked about previously, you've got 4 or 5, maybe 5 or 6 or 7 animes that all look like they could have come from the same game. And then you kind of have, I guess, Souls-like ones where there's quite a lot of gross monsters and it's scary. And there just seem to be those like 2 factions of Summer Games Fest. The anime and then the scary ones. And then you had some gems that you had to like pick out of the stuff in the middle. But it just seems like everyone's being safe. What do you think?
It's difficult because it's easy to be critical of the output we're seeing at the minute because the industry is struggling. The layoffs over the last few years post-pandemic have been ridiculous throughout the video game industry, to like the numbers of studio closures, the numbers of people let go, the amount of consolidation happening between existing studios, and even that doesn't save them, right, half the time. And therefore they have become very risk averse and very business driven. And there have been some very big high profile failures that have happened even in larger studios, right? You've only got to go back to the Sony released game that only lasted 2 weeks. I've already forgotten the name of that game.
Yep, gone.
That was a live service game that lasted less than 2 weeks, and they pulled it entirely from everything. And it's like it never existed, right? So there have been a lot of problems. What would be the heyday though when you point at games and go, where's the creativity now? Because you go back and there was a time there where, if you remember rightly, there was a lot of military shooters, lots of grey, lots of brown games, lots of games that were third-person cover action games off the back of Gears of War success, lots of first-person shooter games off the back of Halo success and Call of Duty success. So to say there's lots of Souls-like games, yes, there are, off the back of the Souls games, but we see that cycle happen time and time again. When there's a genre-defining experience and everybody wants to get in on that action. And then what happens is the bottom falls out. People lose interest, and therefore development needs to pivot away from it. You've got to look at what happened with the RTS genre. RTS stopped being as popular, the bottom fell out. That's where we got Battle Royale games. Right? MOBA games, right? And then you look at the shooter space where the bottom fell out. That's where we got the Battle Royale games. So we get a lot of those, 100-player multiplayer experiences, and then that's morphed. And then we're starting to get the extraction games, and everybody's trying to make those games, right? Marathon and stuff coming out, and the other game. And now the bottom is falling out of that. The interest is falling out of that. The amount of players is even though we're in like, it's $1 billion of industry and there's millions more players than ever before, it's still a finite amount. People have a finite amount of money to spend on these experiences. So they're going to put that money into the ones they've established and have been going for a long time. The Fortnites of the world, for example, the Call of Duty. So we are seeing this. We are seeing the fact that in the AAA space there is less creativity, I think, but there's more space than ever in the indie spaces now with the way the engines work. That these small 1-man, 6-man teams, 10-man teams can make incredible experiences and potentially be huge successes, and again redefine the industry through those successes and create new genres. It's a really interesting, but yes, undoubtedly challenging time. And while what I'm seeing in the game space doesn't necessarily always excite me, I don't care about the anime games. I don't care about the free-to-play shooters. I don't care much about the extraction shooters. I like narrative games. I like strategy games. That we all have our preferences, but it's cyclical, right? The games might not be there for me as much right now, but there are still some, if you know where to look. And then in the future, there could be more, right? Yeah. So I think we have to wait and see. I think the big AAA games of yore, where the teams of hundreds, the budgets of hundreds of millions, we're going to see less of, because the support for that financially is disappearing. Because the world the way it is right now, that money just isn't there, because you can't guarantee that return on investment, because there's more choice than ever. So the audience is more split than ever. So it's very, very difficult in terms of business. And it's an interesting one, because I've always tried to be fair in my analysis of the industry need around games, that at the end of the day, businesses need and will only exist to make money. And we have to be realistic about that. But it's also a creative medium. So it's a very difficult balance as it always is with creative mediums, because at the end of the day, creatives need funding, and without funding, they can't create. So it's a really gross cycle, because if they're not creating, where does the money come from to fund more creating, right? So it's this awful chicken and egg. Someone needs to take a risk, and people don't want to right now.
Yeah. I guess I have two thoughts on this. I have the thoughts of, surely people are going to realise that eventually this cyclical nature isn't always going to work for everyone, because you will get to the point where the bottom is going to fall out of it. So if you're going to make something that's the same as something that's come before because it's popular, how do you judge if you've got it too late or you're too early, or you're just in that sweet spot in the middle? Would it not be a different idea to try something else? And so maybe we could break away from the cyclical nature of this. And again, also, this is not my cycle. This is not my cycle of games. If someone could please give me more information on the next Mass Effect game, I would probably literally be so excited I would jump out the window. But this is not my cycle, I think. And it's sad that people aren't taking his risks, but you can understand why. I just hope that starts to see little like spurts of green growth in other areas that we can grab a hold of. So yeah,
it's a difficult time because you've got one major manufacturer in Microsoft looking like they're basically pulling out of the race, because they're not going to be, they're not looking to win in hardware anymore. They want Xbox to be available everywhere. So it's that fundamental shift. And Nintendo and Sony haven't really been in the same race either for a long time. So that's very strange, and it's going to be really weird, because I still think there will be a new Xbox, but it will basically be, I reckon there'll be Steam on that, and there might even be PlayStation on that platform. They just, it's not a race they're willing to compete in anymore, because they've lost the last couple of them, right? So it doesn't make financial sense. So instead, what they've done is done what Nintendo did 2 or 3 generations ago, which is go, we don't want to fight anymore. We're going to define our own space, our own way of approaching what we do and how we produce entertainment. So what does that mean?
I think that's
for games?
really
Because that
interesting.
competition, it's really interesting, but that competition is what's driven the business, and that's where money has come from. So because of things like that, that's where, on top of everything, global economics and, the wars that are going on as well, and all of that post-pandemic stuff. But there's another reason that there's less confidence than ever for the investment, because they don't get it yet, right? You've got to think where investment comes from. It's these giant, basically, companies that exist to invest money. They're not experts in the field. They're looking at cost-benefit analysis. So they're looking at, if I put 10 million in, you're going to tell me I'm going to get 30 million out, because if I don't have that return, I'm not going to do it. They don't care what it's for. They just want the return. And that's late stage capitalism, and it's gross and it's awful, but it's what we've got.
It's lazy, is what it is.
Well, it's if I could do that with my money, and if I could put £10 in and always get £30 out, I'd do that. But unfortunately for most of us, it's not a viable thing, is it?
Yeah,
but
I'm sorry, but if you're going to do that, and if you have that money to do that, at the very least, do it for something you're interested in. At the very least, don't just contribute to your own pocket. Contribute to the thing you love as well. It's just greedy otherwise. And I'm not that.
They're in a business of making money,
Yeah.
and they don't care how they do it.
So the thing you love is money. Lovely. When
That's
you die,
fair.
is that going with you? No.
No.
Then contribute to the world in a different way. Not just, I'm going to gather all the money over here and keep it so you guys can't have any. Contribute. Make things. Build things. Make interesting games. Make interesting art. Contribute. Leave your mark on the world in a different way. It's not all about just, I'm going to put £10 million in and get 30 back. I'm going to put £10 million, maybe I'll get 15 back, but we've also made this amazing thing that so many people love. Is that not worth something as well?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Absolutely.
I mean, yeah.
Absolutely.
I understand people are risk adverse, and where I work, you're very, very risk adverse. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't try and create or be part of something amazing that the whole world can enjoy.
Yep. Yeah. So we've got the most. Yeah, I think Sunday night Xbox Bethesda showcase will be really interesting. Let's see what they bring out. I wonder if there'll be any surprises. I think we might get some more of that new Gears of War game. I think we might see some Fable.
Would love Fable.
I'm not really sure much more beyond that at this point. But maybe there'll be some real shockers, that'll completely come out of left field. Or it could just be really safe and more of what we'd expect, right? And I think, what are they going to do? They're going to say Halo will be out on PlayStation 5 in a month's time or something. They've got Fallout, they've got Forza on there now. They've got Gears of War on there now. Like, what next? It's a very curious space. And then, Switch 2's just come out, which isn't really a Switch 2. It's the Switch Pro, which was rumored to come out 2 years ago. And then because they were risk averse, they milked the original Switch for everything it was worth, and then finally put out the Switch Pro as a 2, which is Nintendo's interesting approach as well at the moment. So, will we get the Xbox handheld potentially? And it won't really be an Xbox handheld. It will be one of the existing PC handhelds that have come out recently, that are like a Steam Deck, but it will be branded with Xbox, and it will have the Xbox interface, maybe the buttons built in, but it will have probably Steam support on there as well, right? So it's all kind of coming together into this interesting mash of non-competitive space now. One giant hegemonic gross monopoly that we will have to pay $100 per video game for. So it's gonna be great.
So that generally I prefer Xbox to PlayStation, and it's not about the consoles themselves. It's about for me, it's about the attitude, and maybe I've just been affected by different marketing. Whatever, don't care. I just like Xbox's attitude as opposed to PlayStation's. But if they're going to put everything so you can literally play anything anywhere, fine, lovely. That way you can choose the way you want to consume your games. Things getting more expensive is just something that's going to happen. And I don't see any way around it unless we change society, which might be a big ask for two people.
So that's why we like the console wars, right? Because when there were multiple competitors in the space, they had to be competitive. And to be competitive, you would have to be competitive on price. So that's one of the main reasons you don't like a monopoly. So when there's only one entity in the space, it can dictate the price, and it can make it as high as it wants, because you do not have a choice other than to spend that to engage with that product.
Well, you do.
So that's the concern, and that's what Nintendo's doing. It's basically, that's why we've got an $80 price tag on the new Mario Kart. It's because they know people want to engage with Mario Kart, and the only way to engage with Mario Kart is on Nintendo, so they're going to pay $80 or £75 in the UK. So, and that's not even a full monopoly. That's just because they know that's the strength of that IP, that they can get away with that. So if you do only have one games console, then it will be $100 a game or more, right? And that's not because of other market factors. That's purely because you want to play games. You'll pay the game tax.
But then you will play less games, and they'll lose out that way.
Yes. Well, that's the balance, isn't it? That's the fine line. They'll try and take as much as possible. It's like when we were talking about when you get on that hype wagon around a genre. What they're aiming for, what the developer and the publisher is always aiming for is, I'll use the Battle Royale game as an example. Everyone wants to be the Fortnite. Now, Fortnite was not the first Battle Royale game. It happened to land towards the kind of late midpoint of that cycle of games. Now, then there were many others that have come out afterwards that have tried to get in on that action, and have done to some degree, but haven't had the lasting leg. So what everybody wants to do is, you don't want to be the first, because you don't have to spend the money to break the ground, but you don't want to be the last, because that means there'll be much less return on that investment, right? So you want to find that place where you can hold the audience, but you don't have to create the audience. So it's it's really like this. They're all playing chicken, right? They're all like gambling with the money when they're doing that and going, oh, will I be at the beginning, the middle, or the end of this cycle? I don't want to be there. I don't want to be there. I want to be just in the middle there. You know, and then something about Fortnite had the special juice that kept the kids interested. Mostly about, and if you remember rightly, beginning with Fortnite, they didn't have all the IPs. They were able to do that because of the success they'd made of the game. That's where the money had come from originally, and then they could buy the IPs and license Star Wars and license the millions of others, John Wicks and WWE, to show up in that game. So that's not what created the audience. So to be fair, that there was a real creative spark in that game made by the developers at Epic. That's what did it, right? And then they have rode that success off into the sunset, and it's now one of the biggest games of all time, and that studio and that publisher have become absolutely ginormous off the back of it. So well done to them. But everybody wants a piece of that pie, and obviously that's finite. So it's kind of like it's a game of brinksmanship. Like, who's going to blink first? Who's going to take the risk? Who's going to foot the bill? And who's going to fail spectacularly?
I think I would like more eyes to blink, please. But I'm going to ask you a question.
Yeah.
If anything could be announced this weekend for you, anything at all, what would you want?
Oh, like we're talking like what, Xbox?
No, anything, absolutely anything. Any game, any franchise. Would you want something new? Would you want a next installment in a beloved franchise to return? What would you want?
I love being surprised by new stuff. That's my favourite thing about games, that the thing you don't know about, that you weren't expecting. But if we were talking Xbox, because that's kind of where my head's moving now,
yeah,
I'd love the announcement of a mainstream, proper, core Halo game.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'd love to see us get back to the formula that set them on that path to success. But I think it's highly unlikely. I think if we will get another Halo game, but it'll be a few years away yet. And obviously, you know, Bungie isn't part of Xbox anymore, and therefore that that magic is gone. Really, it will never come back to what it was with Halo 2 and 3. So yeah, I think it's highly unlikely. I'd like to see some Mass Effect, but I think we're a good way off on that as well. Especially after the middling success to failure of Dragon Age, that BioWare is going to probably have to retool and restructure and rethink their approach again. Whether or not EA gives them a chance to do that, up in the air. I could see EA binning them off entirely personally, but let's see what happens there.
I think it's a possibility, but I am still in my heart hoping for a Mass Effect 4.
Yeah. I'd like to see more of Exodus. We didn't get any Exodus at Game Fest.
No,
I think seeing that at the Xbox stuff would be cool if they showed Exodus. I think Exodus is kind of my hope for the future of Mass Effect in a way. That kind of giant space operatic, you know, huge scale, awesome concept, sci-fi extravaganza. I think Exodus can really give us that. I think that's a really cool universe, the more I've been digging into it and reading about it. So I'm really looking forward to that. So yeah, I'd like to see some Exodus. That would be cool. I'd like a date for that, or at least a window, like summer 26 or something would be great, or even fall 26, you know, or Christmas 26. That would be really exciting. But I don't know if they're in that period of we've shown some stuff, but now we're going to go dark and work on it, and then we'll come back next year or something. I don't know where they are in their cycle. So yeah, that would be cool though. Yeah, games are in a weird place, like. Really weird place, very transitional place right now. We need a lot of dust to settle. We need things to calm down. We need a new status quo to be established. Very interesting time. Concerning time, but interesting as well. And there'll always be, the thing with creative medium, right? There'll always be awesome things to find. They'll always be there. If you just have to know where to look. It could be buried somewhere on Steam. It could be hidden under an exclusivity on the Epic Store. But there'll be great games by amazing people, creatively made for people to love and to fall in love with and just latch onto, right? That will continue. That won't stop. Ever.
Is the problem not a problem, but a barrier to find the things, that there are so many now. Because I remember they were going like there were like 18,000 new games on Steam.
He said it. He said it at the beginning of the show, didn't he?
Yeah.
The hardest challenge in
Yeah.
games now is discoverability.
Yeah.
Because there's so much. And that's what he wants the show to be. That's what Jeff said he wanted the show to be, to help people spot the next thing they can fall in love with. Right? And yeah, that is tough. That is tough. And I think, you could spend your whole life doing that. And there are outlets and channels and people and YouTube people doing just that, trying to help with that. Because as the games industry goes through this flux and this disruption, so is games media going through a flux and disruption with closures and outlets disappearing and all of that. So it's becoming harder and harder to know who to trust, who are the right people to be listening to, who are the right outlets that are going to not just be paid off by publishers to give you positive reactions or content. Nintendo, for example, once again, the evil Nintendo, are basically trying to prevent any kind of critical analysis of their games, of their platforms. Nothing's going out early anymore. They basically want you only to go to Nintendo's own news outlets for news on their products. They're not sharing information. They're closing it all down as much as possible. So it's like, when you see that, it's quite disheartening, isn't it? They've always been like that. And Nintendo's always been a bit of a closed shop, though. It's not a new thing. The main
Nintendo's very Nintendo.
Yeah. Hard to love, in my opinion. I don't know why so many people love them. I find that very hard to support when a company operates the way they do. So they're litigious as well. They sue people constantly. They're just dicks. And you can be critical of Sony and their laddish attitudes and stuff, but at least they're not as outwardly litigious and just arseholey as Nintendo. Christ.
Yeah.
And then Microsoft.
It does make it harder to love them.
And can you defend Xbox and Microsoft now? I mean, firing more people than ever because they have so many. But when you hear they laid off 8%, 8%'s like 10,000 people, right? So it's just crazy numbers of people being fired by Microsoft and stuff in their various areas and divisions, because they literally one of the biggest employers in the world, I think. So it's ridiculous. And then they haven't bought any studios recently, but snapped up 20. What have they done with them other than close some? There's been very little output. So they're all kind of bad in their own way. So I don't know. Just go indie. Don't buy from the big publishers.
Why not? Let's do it.
Yeah. Okay. That was another episode of 8 Dead Giants. I hope you enjoyed our game-focused fest there, guys. There'll be more content about games and films and TV and books and comics and sports and real play to come in the future, I can guarantee it. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please follow us on the social channels. You can find us on Twitter, on Blue Sky, on Instagram, on Pinterest? No, I don't think I'm on Pinterest, but I'm on pretty much everything else. And what I would say is, if you enjoy these episodes, they are a podcast. Subscribe to the podcast on a podcast channel. You can listen to these on YouTube, but it doesn't particularly influence the algorithm or help us getting out there to a wider audience. So please get us on iTunes, get us on Spotify, get us on Audible, get us on Pocket Casts, get us on Last.fm, get us on a million others, anywhere there's a podcast. And if you can rate us on there and give us 5 stars, I'd love you even more. I will actually, if I can find 5-star reviews, I'll give you a shout out on the show. And then maybe soon a Patreon. And there might be incentives to sign up. Just a thought. Mm-hmm. Right. Okay, so that was another episode of 8 Dead Giants. It's been awesome having you. Thank you for joining us, Leah.
You're quite welcome.
And until next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.